There are two types of diabetics. One is called type 1 diabetic, which is a absolute deficiency of insulin. People are born, usually it's an autoimmune disease with a reduction of insulin, and therefore it has to be replaced externally. And most people with type 1 diabetes have to be on insulin. This is not the type that is affecting most adults in the world. Most adults now in the world have what we call type 2 diabetes, which is for a long time has been thought of as an insulin deficiency problem. But it's now in the cutting edge research has shown to be much more complex than that. So let us back off and understand. First of all, when you eat sugar or carbohydrate, your blood sugar goes up and your insulin from the pancreas goes up to normalize the blood sugar. This is normal. And then excessive amount of sugar that is not being used by the cells will be pushed into the liver by insulin as well. And inside the liver, the sugar is converted into glycogen for storage. And the glycogen is a short-term energy store. It's good for about 6 to 8 hours, and is used when our body, between meals, for example, when it cannot get to food. Excessive amount of sugar in the liver is also converted into a thing called triglyceride. And triglyceride is a type of fat. It is stored in the liver to a certain degree, and an excessive amount is then released from the liver in the form, packaged in the form of VLDL, as well as excessive amount can be deposited onto the liver itself. If it is viscerally deposited, meaning the fat is deposited in the visceral organs, then such as the liver, such as the pancreas, such as the gallbladder, then you have fatty streaks. In the liver, it's called fatty liver, and 40% of adults in America has this. If it is transported into the bloodstream in the form of VLDL to be deposited in the peripheral tissue, then your peripheral fat will go up, your triglyceride level will go up, and your VLDL will also go up. Now, bear in mind, in the liver is a closed organ system. So therefore, when you put fat into the liver, it can only expand and accept certain amount. It's like a warehouse. If you have a certain number of packages that's full, then it's not going to be able to accept any more. Okay? Peripheral tissue is different. You have lots of room to expand, so you can gain weight mostly in the peripheral. You can see that, but you cannot see it when it's in the visceral organs, like the liver. So we talked about triglyceride. Triglyceride, therefore, is really the storage form of sugar in our body. And when it's too much, it deposits into the liver, becomes fatty liver. It also sends a signal to the body to reduce sensitivity to the insulin. So therefore, using the analogy like the warehouse is full, the packages are jammed. So the warehouse is going to close the door, and when the post office comes to deliver the package, then the liver is going to say no more because I'm full. And this is called insulin resistance. It's telling the messenger, which is insulin, that it cannot accept anymore. So what happens? The insulin is not able to bring the sugar into the cell, which is the liver, and therefore the sugar becomes in the peripheral tissue in the blood and is not being put into liver. And when you measure the blood sugar, it's going to be high. And then you'll be told that you are either normal if your fasting blood sugar is in the 80-90 range, or if you are 100 to 110, you are pre-diabetic. If you are too high, then you'll be labeled as diabetes. A1C normal is under 5.5, 5.6. If you get to between 5.8 to 6 is pre-diabetic or thereabouts. And if once you get about 6.5, you're considered a diabetic. So we are using blood sugar as a determinant. But the underlying problem is not insulin. Insulin is just a messenger to bring the sugar into the liver. The real problem is that the liver is jammed. And the liver is jammed because the triglycerides fill up the space, and it causes the liver to be packed, and therefore the liver becomes resistant to insulin. And that's why you hear this term insulin resistance. Is from the liver's perspective. Of course, when you have insulin resistance, not only does your blood sugar goes up, your blood VLDL also goes up, because the liver is then trying to bring the triglyceride out of the liver into the cells for deposit. And then the body has more sugar in the bloodstream all around. So when you look at diabetes, is it really a problem with insufficient insulin, or is it really a problem of too much insulin secreted by the pancreas but not accepted by the liver? More and more evidence is showing now that is the latter, meaning the pancreas is actually functioning very well, and in fact that's why when your blood sugar is high, giving more insulin to the body either externally or by medication does work, because it basically enhances the insulin's effect in the case of medications or in the case of external insulin by forcing more sugar in the blood into the liver. And this works for a little while, and it's very dramatic. And some people can have it work for 5 years, some people work for 3 years, some people work for longer. But overall, that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is not that the insulin is not being made enough by the pancreas, as in type 1 diabetes. In type 2, the pancreas is actually oftentimes in what we call a hyperinsulinemia state. The pancreas is making too much insulin, but it's no use to make more insulin because the resistance and the sensitivity is not there. So the blood sugar continues to stay up. So, it's almost like an alcoholic that's taking a lot of alcohol, and the way to fix that is to stop drinking the alcohol by stop the triglyceride being high via reducing carbohydrate. But instead, most of us are doing the opposite in medications, is to increase insulin load, which can work for a while, as I said earlier, but doesn't work long term. And the meta-studies does point to that. Now, for many people who are overweight, by reducing the triglyceride, your blood sugar will drop very quickly. I'm talking about like refined sugars, fruits, bread, pasta, etc. And it's very drastic. It can be over a short period of time. So doing a low carbohydrate diet will work. Okay. Now the average person takes about 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrates a day, and you can go down to between 50 and 80 grams a day and still be very comfortable and lose some weight. And for a lot of people, that will lead to weight reduction as well as triglyceride coming down, as well as blood sugar normalizing. The lipid panel would look very good over a few month period. Your VLDL will go down, your good LDL will go up, your HDL will continue to stay up, and your weight will go down, your blood pressure will go down. That's the very dramatic effect when you do a low-carb diet. The problem then becomes, well, what happens if you're already at your weight and you have not much weight to lose, or you need a lot of calories because your energy need for the day is very high, in which case the next step is to go to some form of intermittent fasting, where you force the body to burn ketones instead of burning carbs for energy. And so you can eat at about 11:30 a.m. and then at 6 p.m. and you have this 6-hour window or 7-hour gap, a window where you eat, and the rest of the day you can fast, but you can drink water, of course. Okay, make sure you're well hydrated. And people in fasting state, by the way, also have a need for more salt, so you make sure you have more salt in your system and check your blood pressure. But if the low carb diet does not work because your weight is already at ideal, or you don't want to go lower, then you have to go intermittent fasting and increase your protein and your fat intake. Okay, so you have to balance between carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrate is good, but it's low calorie. Refined carbohydrates such as pastas is not good. And fruit is not good except for certain ones like blueberry and strawberry, which is okay. Fat is okay. Protein is okay, provided you don't have kidney issues. If you do, then you have to go on a low protein, high good fat, and a low carbohydrate diet. And it can be sustained if you do it right. If you have no kidney problem, then you can go on a moderate protein, moderate fat, and low carb diet. And it does not mean that you do zero carbs, because your body does need carbohydrate for fast energy. And if you don't want, especially if you have a very high blood sugar for a long time, you want the blood sugar to come down in adult diabetes to be gradually done over a period of time. And always consult your healthcare provider, because you don't want to just go go cold turkey because hypoglycemia, which can happen if you starve the body too quickly, can be a medical emergency and a life-threatening issue. So don't proceed yourself without a careful consideration of the nutritional balance that you need that's fitting for your body. Those who have chronic diseases such as Lyme, adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and infections of any kind has to be even more careful because number one, the sugar can be off to begin with and may not be accurate, especially the liver as well as in the lipid. So you need to have accurate readings. But on top of that, adult onset diabetes can be managed very well over time if you pay attention to the nutrition. Remember, diabetes in adult is a nutritional illness. It's not an insulin illness. So fixing it by insulin is not necessarily the best idea, although sometimes it can be helpful for short term. Ultimately, you get to the root. The root is sugar, and sugar from the food in the form of carbohydrate. Okay?